What's up, you bad motherfuckers, and welcome once again to the Foot and Fist Sports Network, where today we're going to be predicting UFC Fight Night 90, Dos Anjos versus Alvarez. I think this is going to be a very, very entertaining card, especially considering the next card after that is the Joanna Jędrzejczyk card. This one has a lot more talent on it, especially because the Joanna card has a lot of Ultimate Fighter fights, and that just never really seems to interest me, or in particular anybody else, I imagine. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with analyzing Mike Pyle versus Alberto Mina. Now, Alberto Mina has a 12-0 record. His last fight was against Sexyama, and that is a pretty big win to beat Akiyama, so I'm not going to discredit what he's done so far, but he doesn't have a lot of experience at the top level. Akiyama is his only big-name opponent, whereas Mike Pyle has been in the game for so damn long, and he is so damn tough. He has the reputation of being one of the toughest guys in the practice room, in the gym, but a lot of times he just can't seem to put it all together when he gets into the octagon. So it's going to be a big thing to see if he can go out there and show up as the real Mike Pyle that we've seen here, every once in a while in the octagon. If he does show up, then I don't think there's much Alberto Mina can do to beat him. I'm not going to say that's going to be an easy fight for Mike Pyle, but I do think it's going to be a pretty dominant win for him. I wouldn't be surprised to see it end in the very first round, at the very end of the round, to be honest. But it could go to the beginning of the second as well, but I'm going to go with a first round finish for Mike Pyle. Next up, we have Joseph Duffy, the Irish Phenom, taking on Mitch Clark. I don't really know why I call him the Irish Phenom, considering he's not even the biggest Irish fighter, but whatever, let's just roll with it. Now, Joseph Duffy came into the UFC a little while back, not too long ago, with a bit of a reputation because he is the last man to have beat Conor McGregor before Nate Diaz, obviously. And he came in here with a lot of people hoping to eventually see him fight Conor McGregor in a rematch. The UFC would obviously love to put that fight on just because of how much Conor would pretty much rip into him, and he would probably beat the hell out of him too in a fight. So, there's no doubt that the UFC has a lot of reasons for keeping him in the company, and I see why they put him against Mitch Clark. No disrespect to Mitch Clark, but he isn't at the top. He isn't quite the level of fighter that Joseph Duffy has taken on yet. He recently fought Dustin Poirier, who he did lose to, but let me tell you, there is no dishonor whatsoever in losing to a guy like Dustin Poirier. He has been so amazing ever since moving up to the 155-pound division. He really does look like a different fighter than he was at 145. He looks fresh, he looks very strong, and he just looks very, very, very good. And, losing to him is definitely not a big deal when it comes to losing your stock. So I think that Joseph Duffy has too much experience for this Mitch Clark guy. I think he's probably at a higher level as well. He should be fighting around the top 10. Maybe not the top 5 just yet, but I do think he has the potential to be there based on how unorthodox his striking is. And it's actually pretty good when it comes to his striking as well. So I think that mixed with his pretty good ground game gives him all the tools that he needs in order to basically eventually be a top 5 fighter in the lightweight division. So I would look out for him in the future to be up there, but right now I think he's going to have to get past Mitch Clark, which I think he will. I think he'll actually finish him, probably with a submission, I would say the second or third round. Next up, we have Alan the Model Juban versus Belal Muhammad. Now, no disrespect to this Muhammad, but I don't know much about him. But we do know about Alan Juban is that he's a straight-up dime piece. Eddie Bravo is in love with him. Joe Rogan is in love with him. Brendan Schaub, and definitely Brian, the 50% gay guy. Callen, no disrespect to gay guys. It's just hilarious how Brian Callen is very, 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 very much borderline gay. I wonder if he has actually taken it up the butt. I'm not too sure, but that's something that I think that we should get Callen really drunk on one time on the fight campaign, and we definitely need to find that out. Now, anyway, going back to the big business, Alan Juban has shown in his fights that he is a very, very good fighter. He isn't quite on the top, in the top 5 level of that division, but I do think that he has the talent. We've seen he always seems to put on an entertaining fight, and not only that, but he also has the looks that the UFC are going to be looking for to basically publicize somebody, market somebody. And I think that there's a good chance that if he can continue to improve and keep looking good, he is coming off of a loss, but he has looked good. So I think that there's a good chance of him moving up forward, and I think that's probably why they gave him no disrespect once again to Muhammad, but a little bit lesser competition. I think he's going to get the win here, and he's going to move on to a bigger fight. I would just have to say a finish. I'm going to go with the second round once again. Next up, we have the co-main, and boy, oh fucking boy, what a fight do we have. We have Derrick, the Black Beast, Lewis versus Roy Big Country Nelson. I've been looking forward to this fight for quite a long time because we know that Derrick Lewis is a very tough guy. He's got very heavy hands. He's actually very quick as well for being such a big guy. But Roy Nelson brings something very dangerous to the table, and that's heavy hands and a gigantic fucking chin. Now, the only person in the UFC that's been able to finish Roy Nelson is Mark Hunt. So if your name isn't Mark Hunt, then you know you're going to be in for a very tough fight against Roy Nelson. It's probably going to go all 3 rounds. However, Derrick Lewis hits hard as fuck. The big question is, does he have a good chin too? I haven't seen a lot of his fights. I've seen most of them, but we always see how he pretty much dominates. He always just gets a quick first round knockout. And I'll be honest with you, I predicted that Gabriel Gonzaga was going to win their last fight, and I was dead wrong. I admitted I underestimated Derrick Lewis, and I definitely overestimated Gabriel Gonzaga, and I've been very, very impressed with Derrick Lewis. I am a huge fan. I follow him on Instagram. This guy is hilarious. I really, really, really want to see this guy succeed. And I think that he has all the tools that he needs to be able to beat Roy Nelson. I think he's the better fighter at this point of their careers. It's just a matter of, can he go 3 rounds without taking a big bomb from Roy Nelson, and maybe can he even finish Roy Nelson? Because if he can finish him, then holy shit, is he going to take a huge jump on the ladder when it comes to the rankings. Honestly, guys, I have a hard time ever picking that Roy Nelson's going to be finished. So I'm going to have to go with obviously a decision. I meant third round, duh. It's going to go to a decision. Derrick Lewis is going to win, but it's going to be a tough fight. I think it's going to be a very, very, very entertaining fight. And look for some huge shots to be thrown. There are going to be people being rocked. There's no doubt about that. Somebody's going to be hurt pretty badly. And, I just think Derrick Lewis is the younger fighter. I think he's going to be hungrier. And I think he's going to go out there and he's going to get a very tough decision win. Last but not least, we have Rafael dos Anjos versus Eddie Alvarez. Now, this is one hell of a fight, What can I say? I've been critical of Rafael dos Anjos in the past. I've accused him many times of being a steroid abuser. However, he's never been caught. And in the light of John Jones just being caught, I don't know. Every time, it just seems like everybody who takes it seems to be caught. So it's hard for me to sit here and say that after so many fights, in the top 5, and his second title defense, so this is his 3rd title fight. He also beat Ben Henderson before that. So he's been in big fights plenty of times, and he's never been caught. So it's really hard to sit here and be like, Rafael dos Anjos is without a doubt on steroids. I have my doubts of whether he's clean or not, but it's hard for me to sit here and be credible if I'm sitting here accusing someone who has never been caught. So I'm not gonna mention it for the rest of this video. I will mention it in my personal time, but I won't be mentioning it in this video. So what do we bring to the table here? We have Rafael dos Anjos, who is pretty much the completely well-rounded fighter. He has really heavy hands. He's really technical. He's very fast. He's got really good abilities when it comes to holding people on the ground, and he has a pretty sick clinch game. He has good submissions as well. Not quite. He doesn't have a lot of submissions on his record, but he does have some pretty good submission defense and things like that. So he does have a very well-rounded game. What does Eddie Alvarez bring to the table? He also brings a very well-rounded game to the table, but he doesn't quite seem to have the explosive, just dominance that Rafael dos Anjos seems to be able to bring to the table. MMA math is never really something you can rely on, but if you look at what they both did against Anthony Pettis, you had Rafael dos Anjos, who destroyed him with the very first punch he threw. He completely dominated Anthony Pettis throughout the fight, whereas Eddie Alvarez, he held him against the fence. He did a very good job in doing exactly what you have to do against Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis has always had this weakness of people holding him against the fence or holding him against the ground. For God's sake, Clay Guida managed to absolutely dominate him throughout a whole fight. So, no disrespect to Pettis. Obviously, he's one of my favorite fighters out there. I hope he gets back on track. But I just think that we have to discard that and take a look at what these guys bring separately. Dos Anjos is a better striker. However, Eddie Alvarez is the tougher guy, I would say. He has so many wars on his table, on his record, and I think that's going to be very hard to finish him. Dos Anjos has been dominated in the past by a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, who was able to grab him and just throw him around. So I think Eddie Alvarez has the potential to employ that type of game plan. He has nowhere near the type of grappling that Khabib has, don't get me wrong, but if he is successful in employing that game plan, at least to an extent, then there is a chance that he can beat Rafael dos Anjos. So I think basically Rafael dos Anjos has... Rafael dos Anjos? Sorry about that. Rafael dos Anjos has more ways of winning. He has more ways he can win, but I think Eddie Alvarez also has some ways he can win that is, very potentially strong. So I think that it's going to be a decision. I think both guys are just too tough to be finished. We see that dos Anjos is able to push a monstrous pace all 5 rounds. And it's going to be a very good fight because I think Eddie Alvarez is definitely going to test dos Anjos. However, you look at what happened against Cowboy. Dos Anjos dominated him twice. Eddie Alvarez did not do well against him. It was close, but it wasn't that close, And I just think that dos Anjos is going to have a little bit too much for him. However, I am pulling for Eddie Alvarez. I like the guy quite a bit. I've grown fond of him basically over the past couple fights he's had. I didn't really see a lot of his Bellator fights live, so I was never able to watch his best times live. But I'm definitely becoming a fan of him, and I do hope that he beats dos Anjos. Not because dos Anjos sucks or anything like that. I just don't particularly care for him, and he's kind of boring to me when it comes to personality and things like that. So I'm hoping Eddie Alvarez will win, but I think Rafael dos Anjos is just going to be a little bit too good and will walk away with the decision. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Let me know in the comment section down below who you think are going to win these fights, especially the main event, because I'm very curious to know what other people think about that. I think it's going to be very close, but it seems like a lot of people don't. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Thanks for watching the video. Like I said before, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more coverage for the upcoming UFC cards coming up. Be sure to keep an eye out on those for the next couple of days. Thanks again for watching. I've said that, 3 times now. I'm very, very thankful, as you can see. I'll see you next time, guys.